Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the regular meeting, Wallingford Inland and Wetlands Watercourse to order. The date is Wednesday, July 18th, 2018, and the time is 7:04. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Jim Vitale.
David Parent.
Daryl Porto.
Okay. Going on, consideration of the minutes. We have a regular meeting minutes of April 4th, 2018. Aaron?
Yes. Actually, it was Commissioner Kern that asked me to revisit that. And what it was is that Commissioner Simon voted, but there were 3 votes, and he did not vote on 2 of them, but he did vote on 1 motion. And so we can remove that vote from that motion.
So you've corrected the minutes for that evening?
Well, what you do tonight is you approve the minutes as corrected. That's how you say it. We never approved them. We're going to approve them for the first time tonight, believe it or not, even though it's July. So we're approving the April minutes as corrected.
I'll entertain a motion to approve as corrected.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting as corrected of April 4th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
No,
Call for a
Mr.
vote.
Chairman. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Dave?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes.
Bob?
Oh, excuse me, I have to change my vote. I abstain, I wasn't there.
Just make a note of it. Okay. All right.
Dave abstained from the vote to approve the minutes, okay, as well as I do. Okay, so they're approved. Okay, the regular meeting of June 6th.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. The minutes of the May 2nd meeting were approved, but Commissioner Kern said, Aaron, please go back and check the names. And what he was referring to, there was some confusion about if Commissioner Simon was at the May meeting. Because it indicates you were not present. Is that true?
That'd be correct.
Okay, so then that's correct. You were not present? Okay, then all that is under the word where it says not present. You just have to add his name. That was it. But those, they will be corrected. We already approved them and they will be corrected.
Okay, going on to June 6th. Any discussion regarding the minutes of June 6th? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of June 6, 2018 be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ally?
Abstain.
Dave?
Approve?
Debbie?
Yes.
Darrell?
Abstain.
Abstain. So it's approved. Okay, special meeting, minutes of the special meeting of June 14th, 2018. Is there any discussion regarding those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the minutes of the special meeting of June 14th, 2018 be approved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ally?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Darrell?
Abstain.
Bob? Yes. Abstain. Okay. Now, we're going to move around on the agenda because I think some are going to take longer tonight than others. So at this time, we're going to get into old business application D, 18.6.1, 15 Windswept Hill, Paradise Hill Vineyard and Winery. This is for a request for determination of an exemption for agricultural under Exception 4.1A.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. I apologize for the PowerPoint in your way.
If it'll help, we'll use it.
You use it. I don't blame you. Whatever it takes.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Daniel Mara. I'm Sandler and Mara. With me is Mr. Richard Ruggiero.
Got to use the microphone, yes, sir.
Okay. Is that better? My name is Daniel Mara from Sandler and Mara, and with me is Mr. Richard Ruggiero to continue our application from the June meeting and from the site visit that happened on June 14th. Since that time, since the last time we were here, members of the commission have gone out to the winery and seen what we intend to do. And then you've also had a new report from Ms. O'Hare, having dealt with the site visit and conversations with Attorney Small. And what I'd like to refer you to, if I may, is the last page of Ms. O'Hare's report. It is also, the same statute was included in the materials that we submitted, and I've also printed it out in a much larger typeface if that would be helpful for you, if you would like to have a little easier reading. If I may approach it, provide this for you. You note on the printout that I just provided, there's some areas that are highlighted, or they're actually are grayed a little bit. Those are areas that I think are of reference. There's a lot in that statute that has to do with aquaculture and woodlands and things that we're not concerned about, but you have the whole statute in front of you. This is a statutory question, because your regulations define farming pursuant to the state definition, which is in the statute that's in front of you. What we have done, or what we plan to do, is add some parking, add a tent, and add a patio to the amenities, the sales amenities at the winery. And then we plan to build a small addition on the back of the winery for equipment, repair and storage, and processing areas. All of that activity happens outside of any upland review area or any wetland area. There are wetlands on the next door property, 12 Windswept Hill Road, but not on the property that we're occupying. There is a drainage way that has been identified across the rear parking lot that was seen on the site visit. That has been cited as a potential intermittent watercourse. To me, it is not. It doesn't have the indicia of an intermittent watercourse, but has been cited as a potential for one. So what we're asking tonight to be is exempt from wetlands regulation as regards the activities and the amenities that we intend to install at the winery. The statute describes farming as a lot more than just a guy out in the field with a plow. The statute describes farming as the business of farming, the production of agricultural commodities, the preparation, the shipping, and the direct sale of agricultural commodities. All that is farming. It may not fit into what people think is the traditional sense of somebody out in the field, but it is all defined as farming in the state statutes and in your regulations. And everything that we're looking to do is in connection with the growth of grapes, the production of wine, and the direct sale of wine to customers. It's a fairly straightforward, I believe, analysis. The tent and the patio that is on the lawn area of the winery provides only a place for people to sit after they buy wine at the winery. Wine sales from wineries in Connecticut occur over the counter at the tasting room. They don't occur in liquor stores. No Connecticut winery, at least no Connecticut winery that I know of, produces a sufficient volume of wine to be able to get any of its products in a liquor store. And clearly, Paradise does not. All of these sales of wine for homegrown wine in Connecticut occur at the production point, over the counter at the winery. That is the only way we sell wine, and all of the amenities at the winery are intended solely to augment sales. That's it. We don't have anything that goes on in the winery that isn't intended to augment sales. We have the ability to have people come in, they sit down, they can drink wine, they can buy wine by the glass, the bottle, the case, if they like it enough. We have facilities to ship wine if need be, or permitted. So if you want to have your wine mailed to you at home, we can do that. But that's what we have. That is the whole business of winery in Connecticut. And we're just like every other winery in Connecticut. So Ms. O'Hare and Attorney Small refer in the memo to the new normal of farming. Well, I don't know if it's new normal, but it is normal. That is what agriculture, winery agriculture in Connecticut is. So the only question I have, I think the commission should have is it related to farming? And are we growing and producing an agricultural commodity? And I think the answer is quite directly yes to all of that. Wine grown by the grapes, we grow the grapes, we make the wine at the facilities. So everything that we have and everything we're asking for is in furtherance of the ability to sell wine. And it is outside of the normal jurisdictional area of your review.
Well, then why are you here if it's outside of our jurisdiction?
Because not everybody in the town agrees with me on that.
Well, if it's outside a 50-foot upland review area, you shouldn't even be here.
I think we're here because of the 20,000 square foot requirement. And I think we're here because there was this view of a drainage issue across the rear of the parking lot.
Well, are you impervious surface at 20,000, or is all of it at 20,000? I thought I read somewhere that there's different pieces of this. Is it some of it at 12 that is included in the 20,000?
There are different pieces of this. There's a driveway that comes up to the winery. There's a parking area around the winery. And then there's the hardscape roof patio tent. Those are the pieces.
And why don't you just get a wetland permit if you're over 20,000?
We crossed that bridge last time we were here, and if we need to have a wetlands permit, we will. But I think we are outside of the jurisdiction of wetlands because we get to do this matter as a matter of right.
Well, I hear what you're saying about the new normal, but I see you've got parking spaces for buses. Is that for farm workers to pick the grapes?
Sometimes, yes.
To bring buses of employees?
People come in at the end of the season to come in and pick grapes. There are other people who come in larger vehicles, buses, or those long vans, who come in to buy wine. People go on winery tours where they'll hit 3 or 4 or 5 wineries a day because they're getting their wine passport stamped. They come in on buses. We don't arrange for the buses, they show up. And then once they're there, there has to be a place for them to be. But they're there to buy wine. So that's why we don't like to have the buses, but they show up.
I thought I heard in your issues around the media and the newspaper that you were going to have entertainment and have different functions held there and have a banquet hall and associated with this site.
We're not allowed to have any of that. We have the ability to have music indoors in the tasting room. We are not allowed to have reserved events without approval by the town. We cannot have a banquet hall, but people can bring in food. If you look at what the zoning requirements allow us to have, it's very tight. We can sell up to 8 o'clock at night, and then we close. People can come in, but if they want to come in any sort of a group, if there's any sort of an event of the type that you're talking about, I believe, we have to get approval from the town. We have to give notice to the town. We're not allowed to serve our own food. Catered food can come in. We don't sell food, we sell wine.
All right. Now, I'm going to apologize because I've been laid up and haven't been able to attend either the site investigation or this. But in Erin's report, she has dealt with different facets of this application. And I get a feeling that some seem to qualify under agriculture pretty closely, and others seem to drift more into a commercial side. So I'd like to hear from Erin now regarding her opinion, or not opinion, what's the latest?
Okay. It seemed more clear-cut last go-around, last month's meeting, but I had a second meeting with the Corporation Counsel, Janice Small. I also conferred with the DEP wetland staff. There's only one staff person up there at DEP for wetland advisory information. And after conferring with them, I have a slightly different take on it. Basically, the courts have held, there have been a lot of court cases on this, not per se on wineries, but on agricultural exemptions in general. And what's come down from all of them is you have to really adhere very strictly. It's called narrowly construed. The legislation, the regulations are narrowly construed. That means you've got to really read them word for word and not stray left or right from what they say, but try to stick right to the words. So the Corporation Counsel submitted a second opinion letter, which Attorney Mary referred to, on July 12th, which went out in your packet. And on the back of that was her original opinion letter. In her new opinion letter, she basically said the commission should examine all relevant facts and make a determination as to whether all or some of the activities fall within the farming exemption, base it on the law. So that's why I attached to the back of my report a copy of Section 1-1Q, the state's definition of agriculture, which is actually found in our regulations. It's in our regulations, but
Move on.
for your convenience, I attached it. So what I would like the commission to do is look at the relevant parts of this. And by the way, Attorney Mara, I didn't get your handout. I'm not privy to that handout. But what I'd like you to concentrate on is the language that says, it's the, attached to your environmental planner's report, it's the fifth sentence from the end of it. This fifth to last sentence says, let's look at these things as incident to ordinary farming operations, the sale of agricultural commodities. So I guess we could have a discussion, and do you think that growing grapes is ordinary farming? Maybe that's where you start. And
Well, they talk about read the law. My experience is the law needs interpretation every time they write a statute. They never write black and white. There's always a gray in there, and you're supposed to pick out what you want at the time depending on the court case that you're involved in. That's been my experience with the law. So to have DEP say read it and interpret it, that's what it means, interpret it. So interpret it, is this the norm? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe a banquet facility is not the norm. Maybe this is totally an agricultural exemption to what? I don't know, but I don't know. Why does it need a permit at all being outside the 50, just the 20,000 square foot?
that, and then also it drew my attention, again, when it went to planning and zoning, it was referred around. I looked at this parking lot, which was presenting erosion. It was uncontrolled erosion today, and then they're going to expand the parking lot. That means it's going to have more uncontrolled erosion. So I was thinking, how do we control this stormwater runoff that is currently uncontrolled, and there was no plan to, there's no proposal of how to control it. So then I went out there and I looked and I saw it was running into the wetlands. Yes, it does run about 100, 120 feet into the wetlands. Yes, it does. It wasn't running the day we were out there for our site visit, but it runs in early spring, because I saw it running in early spring. So then I started looking at this issue of over 20,000 square feet, and yes, they're way over that because they're new. Their proposed parking area is 22,000 in itself, roughly, I did the math, roughly 22,000 square feet. So they're way over it. Now, what Attorney Small drew my attention to is, well, Erin, you have to look at, is that, sure, it's over 20,000, but are those areas likely to impact wetlands or watercourses? Because in our regulations, it says over 20,000, but likely to impact wetlands and watercourses. So she says you have to take the residents. Mr. Ruggiero lives on this property. Okay, is that part, his roof, does that drain to a wetland? The answer is not that I can see. Okay, so you forget about his residence and his driveway to his residence. Okay, but what about the parking area? Does that drain to a wetland? Yes, it does. So it is. So is it likely to impact that wetland? Yes, it is. It is likely. So, but then the argument is, but wait a minute, if they're exempt, then it doesn't matter. If they're exempt from everything. They're exempt from that 20,000 square foot provision we have in our regulations. So it's sort of like a round robin thing. So you have to go back to the statute and say, should these folks be exempt? I would say, obviously, for a vineyard, yes, a vineyard is, you're growing grapes, you're exempt because it's ordinary farming, right?
This is the same.
But the sticky wicket is where it says, as an incident to ordinary farm operations, the sale of agricultural commodities. So one would say, okay, so as an incident, their sale of wine is called agricultural under statute. They're selling wine. But then you say, one would say, okay, but you know, a farm stand, you go up, you buy tomatoes. People can park their car, walk inside and buy a bottle of wine. So that's perfectly fine. That's an incident to the sale of agricultural wine in this case. Where do you end? If you have an event, is that incident to the sale of that wine? And that's what I would ask the commission to kick around a little bit. Is there a limit to what can be characterized as incident to the farming of grapes? Where does it end? Now, if the Department of Agriculture would say, no, it's all one. We want these wineries in Connecticut to be successful. Whatever they have to do to achieve success, it's great. But the commission has to look at this and see.
What is chapter 24, 124, the last page in the statute, the last sentence in the statute? Nothing herein shall restrict the power of local zoning authority under chapter 124.
Attorney Mara, do you know?
124 is the zoning statutes.
So we don't fall under that?
Well, no, I don't think you do. I'm unequipped right now to tell you as a matter of opinion, formal opinion that you don't, but I don't think you do. You're a wetlands commission, and this is one of your own regulations we're asking you to interpret. See, it's a little different than just saying you have to look at the state statutes, because your regulations invoke and include the state statutes.
Don't play the game both sides.
I will.
Don't play the game, you gotta go by the state statute and say, well, no, you don't, you gotta go by your own regulations. We're trying to get it all under one roof. Don't blow the wind whichever way it works best for you.
I apologize if I appeared to be doing that. I'm not. But I think the zoning statutes and the wetland statutes are clearly different statutes. And
I'm surprised Aaron didn't follow that through, because everything is predicated in this paragraph of the state. Well, what commissioners got to say? Ally?
I agree with Attorney Small that everything up to selling of wine is agriculture. The parties don't really fall under agriculture.
Dave?
I read the memo and a couple of words come out. Narrowly construed. And that to me means that if it's not in here, it's not an agricultural use.
Okay.
Okay, and what I'm really, and when you see a lot of statutes, and we start, if I can be at the beginning of the third sentence, it says go on, farming shall include. Well, usually, in many cases, what you'll say, it'll say include but not limited to. But that phraseology is not there, which means that you have to look at the words within here. You have to look at everything within the statute itself. You can't start making your own interpretations. So it includes the cultivation of cereal. There's a lot of things he's cut out, you know, like the bees, okay, which I would have, which really pleases me because that's what I wanted to do. But one of the things that they talk all about the things that they can do, they even get into the harvesting of maple syrup and maple sugar. But they say nothing about fermentation. They talk about, when you really get down to the bottom, they go handling, planting, drying, packing, packaging, processing, freezing, grading, storing, or delivering of storage to market, okay? But they then get into either distilling or fermentation, which would be part of wine production. And so I don't really, now, obviously he's writing he's running a winery, and I'm assuming he's licensed by the state, but his authority to do those things derives from other than this particular statute. So I don't see it in here. And then I don't see anything in, gets into the, what you may say is a new normal, things you might want to kind of bring in, I would say maybe through common law, about, you know, a party facility or something that can be going on during the time, music, other people bringing things onto the property. So I don't see, unless you can come in with some case law or, which would probably be where, you know, in a similar case, somebody similar situated was doing these things and the courts have ruled that, you know, particular winery that has these banquet or entertainment facilities is considered farming and therefore the rules don't apply. So that's the problem I have. But then again, if you have case law, I would so love to know.
Debbie?
Or,
I'm sorry. Are you done, Dave?
I'm done if you like, but I think you must respond.
Well, I'd like to respond if it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
I think the way you're reading the statute, I see how you're reading it, but I think, with all due respect, I think the parts that you're missing is it says the production, and you cut out the maple syrup and the maple sugar and the stuff that we're not worried about, but is in front of you. The production of any agricultural commodity. So what we're doing is we're producing wine from grapes grown on site. Wine is an agricultural commodity. It is a fruit product grown on site, and it's being produced. It also says that we're allowed to do the handling, planting, drying, packing, packaging, processing, freezing, grading, storing, or delivery or storage to market of the wine, the agricultural commodity that we produced. So it doesn't say fermentation, I agree with you on that, but it says producing of any agricultural commodity. That's about as broad as you can get.
Okay, Debbie?
I'm just concerned about whether the parking lot can be part of the farming. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. Otherwise, I can see the vineyard is a farming activity.
Darrell?
Yeah, I actually do see the wine as an agricultural commodity. The thing I would say is, though, even if we do deem that the that the vineyard would be exempt, it seems that the uncontrolled runoff would still be in play with, because they have to go before the PZC. Is that not correct? And that seems to be a larger concern of the commission.
Well, I think we have another application in town that is trying to use the agricultural exemption rule, but yet it was determined the activity that he wanted to perform had to still come to get approval from wetlands. Yes, you were going to be able to do it, but maybe not at that point. Maybe you need, in this case, a catch basin or something else. So did that ever get looked at? I believe the application that's got in court with on now, that was still determined to come before wetlands, even though it could be an agricultural use?
Are you talking about the one that's been going on for 9 years, that
Yes.
one?
Yes.
They never applied.
But I thought in that whole legal battle, it was discussed that even though it could be determined to be an agricultural commodity, it still needed to come to get approval by staff.
Right. Our corporation counsel's opinion was, yes, it needed an application. The individual never applied, refused to apply.
So what would be different with this? If you give them the agricultural exemption, do we still need to review the application or the activity? Think about it a moment. Bob?
Like I said, however, if the arguments not necessarily comply with the winery operation.
Microphone, I don't think it's on.
There we go. Sorry about that. It seems here that the state of Connecticut is promoting through the agricultural department this new type of farming. So the way I look at it, it's part of farming. This whole process to get it through. So
I'm not against this parking lot. I'm not against your activity. I'm having a little trouble using the agricultural route to go. If you had an application before me tonight, I would vote in favor of what you want to do. I'm just having a little trouble dealing with the agricultural side. What did you come back with?
I have a question, if I may, for Attorney Mara and Mr. Ruggiero. This parking area, it's going to, I guess, total 98 spaces, right? Something like that. Some are buses, but here's my question. You don't have that many events. You only have several a year, like a handful. So this parking area is only going to be used to its full extent a few times a year. I'm wondering why it can't be grass. In other words, I understand you need at least 10 right in front of the store that are used all the time. But isn't it true you don't only have big events occasionally?
We have people who come to the winery that we don't control. Some days you go in there and there's 5 people in there. Some days you go in there, there's 50 people in there. Some days there's 20 people who come together in a group and want to have, a celebration. Some days there's people with buses that show up on a winery tour. We are being pressured by zoning to show an allocation of parking that we think were needed at the high end of our use. We have regulations on the type of use we can have and how many trips we can generate an hour. We're trying to fit both of those areas together. And I guess my response to your concern about the parking, if I may, is parking is a necessary incident to direct sales to the consumer. If I have a fruit stand in my front yard, and somebody wants to get out of their car and buy my fruit, they have to have a place to park their car. Now, that's not directly comparable to what we're talking about because we got a lot more people coming in to buy the wine. But the issue is, I don't think whether we can have a parking lot, and I think what is concerned about is the size of the parking lot. And I think that is directly incident to the number of direct sales that we're looking for over the counter. We have experience with how many people can be there at a time. And this parking lot is not always going to be full.
All right. I've got a long agenda tonight, so I want to keep moving.
I get that.
How can we get under 20,000 square feet of impervious surface and then they can go on their way? Because it won't need a wetland application.
So what's the question? How can we do what?
How can we get under 20,000 square feet of impervious surface? Because indications, that's the whole thing that this is about. They're outside the upland review area, and we're getting into this discussion only because it's 20,000 square feet.
Correct.
Did I read somewhere in the report that the stormwater runoff from the parking area will be under planning and zoning's direction?
They deal with stormwater as part of their review. They always deal with
And if they
stormwater.
require something, that would be under
Yes,
them.
I will, in my comments, I would make sure of that, yes.
Yeah, but in this case, we're fighting over this thing, and I'm just having trouble using the farm exemption to get there.
So, I
mean,
had
I'm in
trouble too.
favor, I think, I got a feeling, it sounds like everyone's in favor of what they're doing. Nobody's against it, let me put it that way. No one is against their activity. I'm just not sure I'm the only one that doesn't want to use the farm exemption to get there. I don't know if there'll be a precedent set that we won't be able to handle in the future. You have another suggestion?
Let's see,
Well, Aaron already suggested a grass surface. What about gravel or some other permeable surface?
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. Did I see millings was going to be the choice of material here?
There are some areas where millings are used, and those are the driveway areas that enable the farm to be used. The area in the back has got an area near the winery stairs where the handicap parking spaces are. That is going to be millings or something of that nature to make it a little more secure for people to come and go. The rest is kind of a mix of gravel, dirt, some millings.
Of this parking area?
Of the parking area in the rear. The parking area that you saw when you were out there is the parking area we're talking about. There's going to be no further clearing.
So it's not going to all be millings then?
No.
And it's not
Not
even
to my
sure
knowledge.
that millings is as impervious as you'd like to think they are.
Correct. In fact, we were advised, or I'm told that the town advised us that millings were okay when they were first put in some years ago on the driveway areas,
Okay for what?
for use in the driveway areas.
They're okay for everything, but whether they're totally impervious
Correct.
is an argument. You may actually have less than 20,000 square feet of true impervious surface.
As far as I know, there's not 20,000.
You have an engineer sitting to your left,
It was not the engineer who drew up the
but
plan.
his math works pretty
He's
well.
doing math even as we speak. I think the question that I have on that is, there are areas that are totally and absolutely, without question, incident to the production of wine. The driveway that comes in allows the trucks to come up, to get the wine, to deliver grapes, to take grapes away, to move the tractors. And now we have this questionable parking area because I think the concern, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think the concern is that the parking area is too big. That somehow having a parking area of that size gets it out of the flavor of being directly incident to sales. And I don't mean to mischaracterize, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the concern I'm picking up. That parking area, that increased parking area, total surface area, by recollection, is not more than 20,000 square feet. But I don't have the math to give that to you right now. But it seems not to be the areas that were there, that are allowed to be there by virtue of just regular farming use, or at least in my opinion, allowed to be there by farming use. It's this, I think the issue, if I can, is the expanded parking area that's causing the difficulty. And
Well, I heard something about trucks coming up to get the grapes. You're not shipping grapes out. You're
No.
bringing grapes in.
bringing grapes in. Maybe someday we'll ship them out, but right now we're bringing them
Mr.
in.
Chairman,
You said you don't sell that many.
I had one more question about the 98 spaces roughly, and I know that's not, how did you arrive at, how did you arrive at that, the need for 98 spaces? Why not 110 spaces? Or where's the outer limit here?
The outer limit is the practical limitations of the size of the available property. There is not going to be 98 spaces. There is some concern about the size of the passageway around the spaces. We had a surveyor come up with a plan where we said, if you can find parking, put parking in. That's basically what we said. So there's areas that were drawn as parking, which the town has come back and said it's inadequate. So we're going to lose about 25 spaces. I think we're going to be down to 80, 85 spaces by the time we're done. And that's because they fit.
So basically, what I think I'm hearing is if you got the agricultural exemption, you'd go for as many spaces as you could fit.
Well, first of all, we can't fit more than that. And second of all those spaces are not all in this back parking lot. But
I'm getting a feeling now that if you looked at the plan again and did the calculations, you'd be under 20,000 square feet. Would you think so, Aaron, if they've gone from 98 to 88?
Yes, and also, because I would have said no, but the Corporation Counsel Small said, Aaron, you got to break each area off. So Mr. Ruggiero's residence is going a different direction. So once you break all these things off, yes, it is possible that that new proposed parking lot would be under 20,000 square feet. I don't know, but it is possible that it would, especially since they're now going to eliminate 10 spaces or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure that because of the way they're losing space by adding driving areas in between, that the actual surface area is going to be reduced with the number of parking.
I think I need to be clear because I don't want to mislead you in any way. The spaces, the 80 to 85 spaces we're talking about, are not all in the back. There's some up in front. In fact, 40 or so of those spaces are on grass out in the front of the winery building, not in the rear. So we're not losing a lot of spaces in the rear where the area of concern has been. And I don't want to mislead you, so.
Can you get the impervious surface that's subject to our regulations? Because there's some areas that aren't subject to our regulations. The roof drainage that has no impact on wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. Can you get that under 20,000 square feet?
I believe we can. I'm not an engineer, but I believe we can. And I think it depends on.
If you can get it under 20,000 square feet, you can go on about your business then.
What does that mean?
I believe that's possible. My question is how do I certify that to the commission?
Which commission?
To you.
Well, I think you got to bring it back into Aaron and convince Aaron that the parking area that would have any effect to any wetlands, or the impervious surface, depending on how impervious, is less than 20,000 square feet, that would have a negative impact to wetlands.
And
Because I heard you're only about 22,000, so you're not a whole bunch over 20.
we're not.
And I don't mean to hold you up for September because that's our next meeting, but if for some crazy reason you couldn't do that, you could hit us with a application in September.
Well, sorry to interject, but if it's under that regulation, could that not be administrative approval?
If it's under 20,000 square feet, they don't need anything.
Right, so,
I'm just saying if they couldn't hit that
oh, okay,
threshold.
all right.
I think that's a fine resolution. I think we will deal with.
You on board with it, Aaron?
Yes.
You're on board with it?
Yes, and if you're going to go this way, the commission would have to vote to determine that this,
No, well-
they're exempt.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion that if the impervious surface that has any negative impact to the wetlands is under 20,000 square feet, then it doesn't qualify for needing a permit from this commission.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion.
Hang on just a minute, Erin's got her finger on it.
Just if you could add to the motion, Commissioner Parent, that it's semi-impervious or impervious. Our regulation under that 20,000 is semi-impervious or impervious.
Oh, okay, I see what you're trying to do. Then, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that with respect to this, we don't have an application, with respect to this matter. I'm sorry. This is item D 18-6.115 Swept Hill, 1 Swept Hill Road, request for determinative agricultural exemption under section 4.1. If the applicant can produce a map showing that there is less than 20,000 square feet of either semi-impervious or impervious surface that would affect inland wetlands, that they would be deemed not to need either a permit or they would not need a determination of exemption.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Call for a vote. Ally?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes.
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 Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right. Okay, now we will go on to the public hearing. This is a public hearing. The public hearing will start at 7:50, and it is regarding significant impact to application A18 6.2 5 Research Parkway. Let me just talk a little bit about your application. After all, you're passing out a lot of paper. I know you have the ability to be very thorough and very long, and I want to stay in control that we're dealing with a time constraint here. You're not the last application of the day, but you're an important application. So if we can stay on target for wetlands issues, and I'm sure there'll be another meeting that will continue after this, I would think. All right, now, you're going to have a PowerPoint presentation.
That's correct.
Now, commissioners, the PowerPoint presentation is going to be on this screen. And I'm not particularly interested in, like the kids in the movies back when we were in grammar school. So I'm going to move down to the lower table, and anyone else can move around wherever they choose. I think that microphone works down there, doesn't it, Aaron?
Yes. I'm sorry, I was doing something else.
That microphone at that table?
Yes, you have to push the button.
On the
On the mayor's table.
on the mayor's microphone?
Hold on.
You guys can.
Yeah, I can see.
You're all set.
Okay, I think,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I'm an attorney with the Senaviva Law Firm representing the owner and applicant. With me tonight as part of the presentation is Michelle Carlson. She's our project engineer from BL Companies. She'll be making a good portion of the presentation. Also this evening will be Eric Davison of Davison Environmental Services. He is the project soil scientist, wildlife biologist, and wetland scientist, and he'll be also participating in the presentation. Just by a quick preface or introduction, the application we filed proposes the redevelopment of 5 Research Parkway. It's currently developed, as I'm sure all of you know, with several buildings, including the bristol-myers squib headquarters and other buildings and associated parking. The proposal is to raise the existing corporate headquarter building, the power plant building, and develop the site with 2 new office warehouse buildings. And you'll see from the presentation the size and location of those buildings, loading dock spaces, etc. Parking spaces that'll be fewer than the current number of spaces at the site. We're here before the Wetlands Commission because our proposal involves regulated activities as defined in section 2.1Z of your regulations. As part of the presentation, we'll go through each and every impacted or disturbed area that we're proposing to do work. We'll present that again as part of the presentation. We'd also acknowledge, as you may recall from last month, we acknowledge that our proposal includes an activity or activities that pursuant to section 2.1cc of your regulations, if approved, would meet the definition of significant impact. Thus, pursuant to section 7.1, 7.2, 7.5, and 9.1 of your regulations, the applicant has consented to, and this commission has scheduled this evening the public hearing on the application. So we're properly before you, and the commission has jurisdiction. We're going to show you the existing conditions. Again, this is the developed site. We have the visual aids, hopefully to assist you in understanding, because this is a large site. It's about 180 acres in size. It was developed by Bristol-Myers back in 1984 through 86, I think was the development term initially. This property has been before the commission on a couple of times since then. I think that initial construction was prior to the creation of the local Wetlands Commission, but it's been here on a couple of applications during that time. There may be some familiarity that you have with the site. The main building that's located there, which is about 975,000 square feet, would be raised should it not be otherwise tenanted in the near future. And again, as part of the presentation, we'll be identifying the current wetlands conditions and also the proposal that is before you. So with that, Eric Davison will begin to address the wetlands on the site.
Is this, okay. Back to the last one. Good evening, I'm Eric Davison, soil scientist and wetland scientist. I just want to walk you through the distribution of wetlands on the site and just give you the basics on where they flow. Can you blow it up again? The basic flow paths of the different wetlands on the site. So all of the wetlands on this site flow from north to south. There are basically 4 headwater systems that all converge into the Muddy River. You've got this western system here, and this one is fed by a wetland that's north of Carpenter Lane, drains through a culvert and drains down across this existing crossing that leads to the daycare building and eventually flows into the pond. You've got this central system that has a culvert discharge from Carpenter Lane, but then a second discharge that feeds from another wetland system that's north of Carpenter Lane. And again, this central wetland system flows down and eventually leads into the pond. The easternmost system is the headwaters of the Muddy River, which originate just off-site to the north in the Eversource utility right-of-way. They drain onto the site here, as you can see. then back off of the site into the right-of-way, and then the Muddy River forms here and re-enters the site, flows down across the existing crossing through two 36-inch culverts, and back into this central system, and then down into the pond. Then you've got this fourth headwater system here that's completely isolated within the site. It just originates at this perimeter and then drains west and down into the Muddy River. You've got two ornamental ponds, this one here on the east, and then the large main pond on the west with the dam here. You've also got a historic farm pond here that relates back to the old farming activity. The only other wetland on the site is this very small wetland, which we termed Wetland 2, which is entirely isolated and is essentially actually an old farm dump. It's full of old farm equipment and is just isolated in that patch of woodlands. Yeah, how do you switch? Just to give you a quick overview, this is sort of your typical wetland on the site. It's your red maple swamp. Anywhere where you see the wooded wetlands on the site, which is the most common type, this is basically what you have. Your very typical red maple swamp. This is the dam and western ornamental pond that detains the Muddy River. One of the things we wanted to point out is there's a number of areas on the site where the wetlands have already been filled for various reasons. This is a sewer line crossing and culvert, and what you have is the wetland ending here, draining under the sewer line crossing, and then restarting here. Just for reference, the main access drive is here, so we're looking north. This is another utility line crossing. This is, just for reference, looking west in the distance is the Daycare, which you can't quite see, but this is another sewer line utility crossing that basically confined the wetland into this little channel, and the current owner has a walking trail through here. But this is just another example of where there's an existing utility and sewer line crossing. And then I just wanted to show you just the extent of the Muddy River as it flows through the site. This is the point at which the Muddy River enters the site on the east side. For reference, behind us, so if you were facing this way, behind you would be the Eversource utility right-of-way. It enters the site through these head walls. This is basically the central portion of the Muddy River as it flows through that eastern patch of woods. We're looking west, and for reference, this is the existing building in the distance here. This is the point at which the Muddy River flows underneath the existing driveway access road. Just for reference, we're looking south, and again, there's the main building. And this is the point at which the Muddy River leaves the site on the very southern extreme. There's a road there, I can't recall the name. Barnes Road on the south side. As you can see, there's the road is elevated here. There's a gabion wall, and then there's the two culvert inlets. That's basically how the river flows from start to finish across the site. So that's really the lay of the wetlands on the site. I'm gonna hand it over to Michelle so she can go through the project.
Oops. Good evening, my name is Michelle Carlson. I'm Director of Land Development at BL Companies. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. With me tonight too, in case you have questions, is Emil Paredes. He's a senior engineer with BL Companies. He's also a licensed engineer in the state of Connecticut. I just want to give you a quick orientation. I think you all obviously know where this site is. It's at 5 Research Parkway. In all of the slides that we have, Research Parkway will be along the bottom of the page. Carpenter Lane will be on the left. At the top is the CLNP easement, and to the right are some residential homes, and then this is Barnes Road right here. So that way you kind of orientate yourself. One of the slides Eric was showing of the bridge and the daycare where the utility crossing is right through here where there's a walking path. The site, as Dennis said, has 180 acres. There's 25 and a half acres of wetlands, 5 acres of detention ponds, and there are 26.9 acres of upland review area on the site. The site is in the Wallingford Watershed Protection District. It's outside of any FEMA flood zone. There's no floodway, even the river's not in the FEMA floodway. The site consists of the existing Bristol-Myers building here, the power plant here, the daycare facility, and then associated existing paved roadway network starting the main entrance on Research Parkway, an entrance to the daycare on Research Parkway, and then there's an access here off of Carpenter Lane also. You want to go to the next one? Okay, the site is in the Muddy River watershed. Outlined in blue is the Watershed Delineation, which is just about 575 acres. And you can see this is our site here, which falls within that Muddy River watershed. Before we came to the alternative that's before you, we looked at several different alternatives. And the original alternative that we looked at when examining the site was, can we fit a large format building on the site with associated parking? And that would have involved filling in a portion of the Muddy River. And we did pursue that with Department of Fisheries and the Connecticut Deep to see if that would be something that would be permittable. And that was determined not to be a viable alternative. This alternative would have filled approximately 1/2 acre of wetlands, and there would have been about 4 1/4 acres of upland disturbance. The wetlands fill would be the dark here, a portion here, and then some over here associated with a large format building, and then all the green represents areas of upland review impact area. So we moved on from this alternative, and then we went to looking at 2 buildings. How could we get 2 warehouse buildings on here? And we looked at this alternative, which involved no filling of the Muddy River at all. We're respecting the 100-foot buffer to the river. And the green areas shown on this plan represent the areas of upland review area that would be impacted or disturbed. And that equated to 2.05 acres of upland disturbance. And then the wetlands fill on this application, this alternative was right in this area here, and a portion here. And that was 4,275 square feet of wetlands fill. Through conversations with our team and with Aaron, this was still not acceptable. So we then went to the alternative, the plan that's before you today, where we have just one proposed wetlands fill, which is right here, and that is just over 2,000 square feet. It's 2,465 square feet of wetlands fill proposed, and then we are disturbing about 2 acres of upland. And here we have a warehouse, a large format warehouse here, and another warehouse there. The first warehouse, just excuse me for 1 second. Where did I put it? Okay. Yeah, the first warehouse 1 to the left is 641,000 square feet, and warehouse 2 to the right is about 460,000 square feet, with access from Carpenter Lane into this warehouse, an emergency access here, crossing over the Muddy River in the same spot that the existing driveway is today. We're not changing the location of this roadway. It's in the same location, and that's going to be an emergency access for emergency vehicles to get through the site from one site to the other. We're maintaining the existing access here on Carpenter up to the warehouse that'll go in the vicinity right where the existing Bristol-Myers squib building is now. So this is the plan that's before you. We will have employee parking for this warehouse on this side over by Carpenter Lane, employee parking here for the second warehouse right in the vicinity of where the existing parking is now for Bristol-Myers squib. So this is the proposal that's before you. I'd like to go through and give you detail on the areas that are impacted. So in green right now are the areas that are impacted. It's hard to see, but these are the areas, about 2 acres of impact, that are seen with the proposed development. And we also are creating an area of wetlands over here that Eric will go into detail. But these green areas along the fringe are in the upland review area that we will be doing various activities to facilitate the development. The same up in this area, a little bit up in here. It's really along the fringes of the upland review area that the proposed disturbance is. The one wetlands fill proposed is right in this vicinity. So now, if you have the document in front of you, I can go through the specific impacts to the upland review area. If you go to the next slide. Okay, this plan numbers the disturbances, and they are numbered exactly on the sheet that's in front of you if you want to follow along. Maybe we could zoom in a little bit.
What page?
are we on? It's listed, David, it's listed as site disturbance on the large packet.
Kevin can show you what page we're on. Let's go down so we can see one. We can zoom into each of them as I talk about. Okay, upland review disturbance area 1 is here at the northeast corner of the site, and it's shown in green. And in this area, the disturbance is necessary due to site grading. So we're grading in that area, and we're grading approximately 19,230 square feet of area in disturbance 1. We slide over, we come to disturbance 2, which is up by the CLNP easement area, and there we're doing some site grading and some limited demolition. We're taking out some of the existing asphalt that's in area 2, and there's a total of 2,599 square feet of work being done in this area, in the upland review area. We continue over toward area 3, which is still in the back of the power plant, and there's additional grading and demolition in this area. We're removing pavement in this area, and that's approximately 1,933 square feet of disturbance in this area. We go to disturbance area 4, and in area 4, there's disturbance in this area to facilitate new site paving, site grading, a portion of the retaining wall, utilities, and our storm pipe network. And the disturbances in area 4 are 13,515 square feet. Directly adjacent to area 4 is disturbance area 5, and this is where we're actually filling the fringe of the wetland. And this area will have, there's grading, utilities, paving, and a section of the retaining wall. And this is where the 2,465 square foot filling of the wetland system is. This filling represents 0.19% of the overall wetland system on the site. So there's 25.5 acres of wetlands. We're proposing to fill 2,465, which is 0.19% of the wetland system. Upland review disturbance area 6 is also near the entrance off of Carpenter Lane. And in this area, we will be grading. There'll be a portion of the entrance drive, retaining wall, utilities, and the storm pipe network. In this area 6, which goes all the way over to Carpenter Lane, we're calling this entire area here. This is area 6. And this is 22,315 square feet. We slide over to area 7, which is along the driveway of the warehouse here. In area 7, we are disturbing approximately 1,883 square feet, and this disturbance is necessary for site grading. Area 9, moving along to the south, that green area there, that upland review area disturbance is due to site grading, utilities, paving, and a portion of the retaining wall, and that's 13,365 square feet of disturbance. Area 10 is right near the Muddy River and the existing driveway that's there. and that emergency driveway, there's going to be some site grading necessary there, and that disturbance is 784 square feet. Area 11 is along the driveway again, and this is just on the other side of the wetland system in the upland review area. And in here, there's grading, site grading for the emergency drive, the retaining wall, and the storm pipe network, and this is 8,335 square feet of disturbance. Area 12. Just want to zoom in so they can see. Okay. Area 12 is in the upland review area, and this disturbance is necessary due to the installation construction of the new stormwater system. And in this area, there'll be grading and a portion of the sand filter, and there is 957 square feet of upland disturbance here. Area 13 is up in the upland review area, and there's going to be site grading along the entrance drive to facilitate the retaining wall utilities and our storm pipe system. Two more. Oh, yes, area 14 is down where we're going to be installing new utilities for the existing daycare that's not being used right now, but these utilities, just to give you a quick explanation, the utilities that service this building come from the back, from the power plant up at the top of the site. And so when that power plant gets decommissioned and taken down, we need to provide utility service to this facility, and that will be brought from Research Parkway. And this area of disturbance has already been disturbed. So this is still another disturbance to extend these utilities, but it's in a previously disturbed area in the existing driveway. Area 14 is an area of upland that we will be disturbing to create the wetlands. This whole area, if you've been out here, there are, in this vicinity in here, there are piles of silt and asphalt pieces, and there's gravel and weeds. This whole area of work is a previously disturbed area. And one thing that I would like to point out is our total upland disturbance area, disturbance in this vicinity on the project, we're disturbing 7.7% of the upland area. Okay, the total upland area is just over 2 acres that we're disturbing, but of that 2 acres that we're disturbing, 1.3 acres was already been previously disturbed to facilitate development of this system, this bristol-myers facility. So we're talking about 0.75 areas of new upland disturbance. So the total disturbance in percentages of the upland review area is 7.7%, but of that 7.7% of proposed upland work, 4.9% already has had work done in it and has been previously disturbed. So we're proposing approximately 2.3% of new upland disturbance to facilitate this development. So we can go on to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about the existing storm.
Before you go on.
Yep.
Has the commission got any comments regarding the upland review area or the map that she just went through at this time?
Negative.
No.
Okay.
Dave? Okay.
Okay. Before we get to the proposed stormwater system, I want to briefly go through the existing stormwater system on site so you can understand how it's operating. Right now, the 2 ponds that were created as part of this development, aren't really providing much in the way of storm water quality, because this was designed pre-regulations, so there's not all the bells and whistles with stormwater quality that we have to work with now. So the existing parking lot on the north side, I put the storm system in yellow. And you can see that there's an existing underground detention system in here that's collecting part of the parking lot, and then this parking lot is discharging to an outlet that then flows overland and meanders eventually down into the wetland. The same with these two systems here. The perimeter, some of the roadway drainage actually comes into the wetland system, and that's shown here in yellow. There's actually easements that are in favor of the town for these discharge points that come into the property. The cup building itself up here is collected in the red. The stormwater is collected in the red. The parking over here in the roadway network is in purple, and that all flows down into this pond here. All the purple stormwater that I'm showing that's collecting the roof, the parking lot, it's all getting collected and getting down into this pond here. And there's a connection between the two ponds that you can see in the green. So these 4 points here are all flowing into the pond in purple, and the green, there's an outlet structure right here, and water then flows from this pond into this pond. And that's what's happening today. If you want to zoom out, then the water flows from this pond, over the dam, and then out underneath the two culverts that Eric shows you on Barnes Road. And that's essentially how it's operating today from a stormwater management perspective. So now the existing stormwater management, the existing stormwater management was designed to conform to the town of Wallingford regulations, the Connecticut DEP regulations, and we had to be sensitive because we're in a watershed that we have to pay close attention to make sure that we are protecting the downstream waters and we're maintaining water quality. We're actually improving the water quality that's going to come out of the outlet here at Barnes Road compared to what's coming out there today. We are going to improve the water quality with the system we're putting in place. So what we're going to do, I'll start from left to right, so for ease of showing you, we're going to collect roof runoff from portions of the building. The yellow portion of the building, we're going to collect the roof runoff into the pipe system shown here in yellow. These pipes are going to be perforated pipes. So the stormwater is going to come off the roof, it's going to flow into the perforated pipes, and it will meter itself into the groundwater in low storm events. It'll go into the ground, and then it'll seep toward the wetland system on the downhill side of the warehouse. Large storm events, it will, not all of it's going to infiltrate into the ground. It will overflow into the wetland system through a scour hole here and a level spreader, and it will flow out into the wetland system. So that's what's happening from this mustard yellow portion color of the roof. The red color of the roof, it's going to be collected and it's going to discharge through this existing discharge here up to the headwater of the Muddy River. What we've tried to do with our stormwater system is mimic the existing conditions so that we're keeping the stormwater going to the same points as it does today. The parking lot for the warehouse over here, if you want to blow up this area, yeah. The blue pipe, it's going to be collected and it's going to come into an underground detention system, and then we're going to have the water quality volume go through, which is the first inch of rain, into a sand filter. And from the sand filter, it'll flow into the wetland system. We also have hydrodynamic separator, which will provide extra, water quality, remove any floatables from that might get into the system. The catch basins themselves on site, prior to even getting through the hydrodynamic separators and into the underground detention, have hoods in their deep sumps. So we'll remove a lot of floatables and sediment right in the beginning through the deep sump catch basins and the hooded sumps. So that is what we're going to do with that part. We originally had the roof runoff coming through the sand filters, and Eric Kruger asked us to make sure we took the roof runoff out of our main storm system and separated it so it wasn't running through the sand filters. so that,
All right, so what you're saying, the roof drainage does not go through sand filter?
correct.
So the first flush on the driveway goes through sand filters
Yes,
and no recharge into the ground?
no. Through the sand filters first, the first flush.
Okay. And you're going to have a maintenance contract on all these catch basins?
Oh, yes, there's an O&M plan that's part of our submission, and then the property owner will have to have a maintenance contract to make sure that everything's maintained.
Okay.
Let's go to the purple above the warehouse, the rest of the warehouse. The truck dock area and the truck area, which is shown with this purple line here, flows into a closed detention system. Okay, so any water coming off of this area is collected in the catch basins with hoods and deep sumps, comes into this underground detention area, that then water flows out of this underground detention area down the hill to a splitter where the first flush goes into the sand filter and then out into the wetland. And then there's also a hydrodynamic separator, and any bypass comes into the existing pond.
So the sand filter is an above-ground system?
Well, it's above, yeah, it's above ground visible.
So it can
There's
be
nothing
maintained.
planted on it, so it can be maintained, correct?
And the first section you showed is, it's an in-ground system, but is it an open bottom?
No, it's a closed system because we
It's a
don't want
closed
any of the contaminants going in, infiltrating into the ground. We want them to go through the sand filter because you want the first flush to end up in the sand filter.
Well, I thought you had an outlet going along the wetlands there.
That's for the roof. This yellow outlet
No,
here,
not the yellow, the purple.
there's no outlet in the purple. It comes all the way down to here.
What's the purple line that travels along the wetlands? That one?
This one here,
Yeah.
that's collecting stormwater from catch basins from all of this paved area, and it goes into the detention system.
Or they're going the other direction then? They're going
You
south?
zoom out, yeah, it's flowing from south, it's flowing from north to south. This flows from north to south into here. Then on this side, the light green, we can zoom in, is, we're collecting the runoff from the roof water, and that is discharging to this overland vegetated swale. Here it starts, and it's gonna come around, and here's the second part, and then it comes into a pipe and goes into this new detention basin that we're creating. So we separated the roof again from the parking lot as requested by Eric. So the only thing going through this, the only flow going through the sand filter is the first flush off the parking lots. So the dark green is collecting stormwater from the paved areas. The same thing here. It's all collecting from the paved areas, and the first flush is going through into the sand filter, and then anything beyond that through the bypass structure here goes into the sediment forebay. And then from the sand filter, it goes into the sediment forebay. This is the newly created extended detention basin that we're putting on the site. This is in that vicinity, if you've been out here, like I described before, where there's a lot of low sediment stockpiles. It looks like there were just dump trucks that dumped stuff, and then there's gravel and a bunch of weeds in this area. And this is where we're proposing an additional detention pond to mitigate the flows from the additional impervious due to the development. And this is an extended detention pond. It's going to have a low flow channel running through the middle here, a low flow channel, a forebay, which is also sized to treat water quality, even though technically we're treating the water quality through the sand filter. And then it will exit here through a scour riprap pad, and then it'll have over 120 feet of overland flow before it gets back into the wetland system. And the emergency spillway is here. This detention basin is designed to accommodate the 100-year storm event plus a foot of freeboard.
It's a metered outlet, metered where?
Yes. Yes, it'll meter it out, and like I said, this is gonna be a vegetated, wet pond detention basin. It's not gonna be like the existing 2 ornamental ponds here that are on site. This is gonna be an extended detention wet bottom basin. And if you wanna show them the next page, which kind of illustrates some of the controls that we have pictorially, so you can see it. This just kind of shows a treatment train, which begins obviously with the O&M manual, where we have sweeping, stormwater is collected in the catch basins. It then runs through a hydrodynamic separator. First flush then goes through the sand filter. These are the underground systems I talked about that are closed underground bottom systems. And this is what the basin will ultimately look like. It'll be a wet bottom vegetated basin, so it won't look like the ponds that are out there right now. And this is an example of the outlet structure up by the CLMP easement, where the red portion of the roof is going to discharge to.
How is this step 5 going to be, how does that become a level spreader? I mean, you've got an in and an out. What level spreader usually ends up at the surface, doesn't it?
It will end up in the surface, but some of it's going to be down below too, so it can dissipate into the ground. So it's going to go over land and into the ground.
It's a ground recharge level spreader?
Correct.
I see they have some level spreaders now that are not, it's almost like a concrete structure with windows across the top, and they seem to be very functional because they don't get out of control. They don't grow over with trees and items.
Yeah, we didn't think that was necessary here, in our opinion, because we're slowing the flows down so much before they even get into the pond. I mean, nothing it's going overland off the roof before it comes into the pond. It's going through the sand filter. There's a forebay that's sized for water quality volume, in addition to the sand filter that's capturing the water quality volume. After it goes through the vortechnic unit, so there's all these belts and suspenders. So the stormwater is going through a bunch of steps before it even gets to that point.
Have you done perk tests on this soil to see what the perk will do?
We've done some preliminary geotechnical work out on the site, and the preliminary information that we have is we can get about 1 inch an hour of infiltration. But in the design of the detention basin itself, we're not taking into account infiltration. I think we have a conservatively designed system. So it's our opinion that this stormwater system is so much more advanced than the system that's out there now, so that when the stormwater is still leaving the site at Barnes Road like it does today, it's going to be of a better quality. The last thing I want to discuss before I turn it over to Eric to talk about mitigation and what we're doing in the upland areas for restoration is to talk about the erosion sedimentation control plan. I think that's one of the biggest things that we had to pay attention to when designing this site, was to make sure that we had a robust sedimentation and erosion control plan to protect the resources downstream and on site. So what we're proposing, which is shown in the red line, we have 3 phases to the sedimentation and erosion control plan, because as the cut and fills happen on the site, we have to react and modify our erosion control measures as we go up. What we're going to do, what will happen first is, in the red shown on the site, is the silt fence that's proposed. And we're not just recommending that we install 1 row of silt fence. We're going to make a sandwich out of it. We're going to install the silt fence, a row of hay bales, and then another row of silt fence. So we have extra protection and controls in place along the perimeter. So everywhere where we're showing in red, we're putting that silt fence hay bale sandwich. The green ponds, they're actually sediment traps. All the green here represent sediment traps. And the sediment traps are designed in accordance with the Connecticut 2002 guidelines, soil erosion control guidelines, and the sediment traps have to collect runoff or stormwater from an area no greater than 5 acres. So they're sized accordingly for the area that's going to be potentially contributing to them. Inside the sediment traps, we're going to put what's called a Faircloth Skimmer. I'm not sure if you've seen that before. It's a PVC structure, a square. It's 5 by 5 in a larger pond, and it's, I think, 2 by 2, 3 by 3 in a smaller pond. And what happens, this is a detail of it right here. What happens is the water is skimmed off the top of the pond. Okay, so muddy water like this gets skimmed off the top into the Faircloth Skimmer and then comes out underneath and goes through the stone before it gets discharged. So you're siphoning off the cleanest water off the top. You're not taking water out of the bottom where the most sediment is. So
You're going to have trouble with the water on this site, because this water retains the sediment of the red stone that's there.
Correct.
And it won't come out, and it doesn't settle out. The only thing that I know that works on this is it called flocking?
I was just going to go there. Aaron and I have spoken with our team, and we have also talked to Eric about the use of flocculants, and we're going to work with him to select flocculants that are acceptable so that we will use them as needed. But we're going to work out the
How are
process.
you going to know when it's needed? I mean, every outlet you have, the stormwater coming off the site's going to need it.
We're going to find out when we have water coming into them. We're going to have it on site and ready to go. I mean, we're going to have extra, a storage thing with extra, hay bales, silt fence, filter fabric, Faircloth Skimmer equipment, flocculant. I mean, we're going to have all this stuff that if we have to repair anything or add anything additional, we have to make sure that everything's on site to react to any problems, but the hope is that we're going to prevent any issues before they happen.
Well, I think they want to contribute the failure of Spring Lake to the bristol-myers construction. And it silted in and all kinds of problems, even after the commission was formed, this red silt caused problems all the way downstream.
The one thing that's different now than then is, not only are we bound by your regulations and requirements, we're also bound by the Connecticut DEP. We have to prepare the general permit for discharge during stormwater activities. And after every rainfall event, significant rainfall event, we have to take turbidity testing at all of these outlets. Everywhere there's an outlet from a sedimentation trap or basin, and there's water coming out, we have to take a grab sample during a rain event and test it to make sure that it does not exceed the turbidity limits as dictated by the Connecticut DEP.
Well, this you're going to be able to see it. You won't have to test much.
Well, hopefully there's enough. I get you. We've worked with this material up in Middletown. We did the Middletown FedEx that just opened recently. Same kind of site, a lot of topography across the site, a lot of cut and fills, crummy red, silty material that when it gets wet, you go flying on it if you're walking on it, and when it gets suspended, it's hard to manage. And we had the same concerns, and knock on wood, it's built, and we had no failures. The applicant, the property owner and the applicant is committed to having us out here more frequently than the weekly inspections as required per the DEP to make sure that this system's working.
I'm a little familiar with the soil up in that area because I was where they built the new National Guard Center.
Yeah.
That would be that track. And that's really, as you described, a slimy red soil, but it's not like this.
Right, this is even siltier. This is more orangey.
I don't believe the sediment stayed in the water in that soft clay, heavy clay product. It'll stay suspended for not only days, weeks, months.
We're well aware that this is going to be the most important part of this
So
whole
when it
project.
fails, you're going to sit there and you say, well, we were aware of it. Now that you're well aware of it, now you're all set. There's no problems. You're well aware of it.
First of all, we're going to inspect it regularly and more frequently than required. We're going to have to test the water coming out of here. And if there's water coming out that's turbid, we're going to have to put another pile of crushed stone, fabric, we're gonna have to make sure that it's running through enough treatment so that that's not happening. And we're gonna be opening the site methodically as we go, so we're gonna be able to react pretty quickly after we have the first basin in to make sure that it is working properly.
You've got so many upland review areas that you're involved in. I don't see how you're going to be able to build your sandwich of silt fence and also continue your grade of your upland review area. You're going to be in the wetlands with your silt fence.
The silt fence sandwich at the bottom of the grading has to go in first. You've got to get in there and
And
clear
where are
the
you going to
trees.
put it? Where the, past the grade of the upland or including the grade of the upland?
We're putting it right at the edge of the upland grading.
Which means you're going to be in the wetlands.
We're going to be on the fringe of the wetland. We can't go in the wetland. Well, we'll have it flagged, we'll have it surveyed. We can't
Well,
go in the wetland.
when I see this much involvement in upland review area, and don't use the percentages, because
Okay.
at 180 acres, I don't even know why you're this close to the wetlands at all, with 180 acres there. But you're so close to the wetlands, this bulldozer operator has got to be the greatest guy in the world to not be sliding into the wetlands on all this upland review area. And you have some pretty steep grades on the upland review area. It's not like it's a low contour pitch going on your site.
There's steep grades there now, coming up, you know, if you've walked out there, there are steep grades.
But they're stable, and you're not, and the grade isn't changed. Did Bristol-Myers create the grade, or was the grade there before?
Both.
And of course, Bristol-Myers had trouble with erosion.
I don't know what Bristol-Myers did or didn't do, but we're bound by a lot more checks and balances than they were.
I just think that you got a lot of upland review area that you say it's okay because you're in this upland review area, but you're going to ruin a lot of wetlands creating your upland review fill. Anyway.
Phase 2? Phase 2 is a similar picture graphic of sediment traps, but the green is showing areas as it's coming up that are stabilized. Slopes that are being stabilized are shown in green in these areas. The proposed detention basin is also going to be used as a sediment basin in the beginning of construction, so that's going to be constructed, one of the first things that's constructed. So that will also be used as a sediment basin during construction. That'll then be cleaned out before it's put into use in the final condition. And then the third phase is the built condition with the orange representing just miscellaneous soil stockpiles that'll be on site. Because those have to be rung in silt fence and protected from anything eroding, and if they're exposed over 30 days, they have to be seeded.
You talked about bringing utilities into the daycare, and then certainly I understand that where the power line came in to run the power plant. How about your smaller building? Are you feeding that with utilities also?
Which smaller building?
To the right.
The one on the right, is that the 400,000 square foot building? Are you running a gas line over there, or is it there already? Sewer's probably there.
Yeah, no, those are going to be fed off of existing utilities. There are existing utilities coming into the site. We do have a site utility plan that shows there's existing utilities here.
But that's what I'm asking, your utilities for the two big buildings. One is easy because it's right off Carpenter Lane. I'm
Right,
sure that's
and
where
then
the gas line comes in.
the other one you can see, he's talking.
But I don't think the original Bristol-Myers had utilities or power line, gas brought over to the main building.
Where's show the gas line? It's coming across, right, through the emergency access? Yeah. there's
Each
one
building's
gas
going to
line.
have their own power facility, or...
Right, correct. So there's gas that has to be brought in to feed the other warehouse that's going in the location of the proposed Bristol-Myers squib, and that's coming through Carpenter and down, down that emergency access road, the existing roadway that's there now. And that's the same thing. We have water, electric. We have to bring in. We're not bringing in anything new up off of the main entrance of Research
Is your
Parkway.
parking lot size required due to the size of the warehouse? Because you don't think you're going to fill that with employees, do you?
It's per the town regulations. meets
Well,
minimum
those
planning and zoning.
regulations seem to get bent on occasion. But it seems a lot of blacktop over there for a warehouse facility.
That is pretty typical. We do a lot of warehouse facilities in Connecticut and across the country as a company. And that's pretty standard, actually, because they have their peaks depending upon the time of the year, too. You know, it depends on what type of warehouse it's going to be and what time of year it is. I'm going to turn it over to Eric to go over the wetland.
Okay, go ahead, yes,
If you want.
that's fine.
Scroll back up where you left off. No,
ENS,
is that my stuff?
that's your stuff.
I don't think it is. Yeah, my stuff. There you go, okay. You can scroll to the next one. All right, keep going. Where we left off. Down. Yep, down. Next one down. There you go. Okay, I just want to go through some quick findings, and in the interest of time, let me be brief on this, and if you want more details, you can just let me know, or all this information's in my report. But I just want to touch on some of the wildlife surveys that we did on the site, prompted by our correspondence with DEEP and the Natural Diversity Database Program. They identified the potential for 3 state-listed species, which we surveyed for on the site. That was the American kestrel, the blue-spotted salamander complex, and the eastern box turtle. So we did a number of surveys, starting with the blue-spotted salamander, which is actually a late winter breeding species. Just to jump ahead to what we actually found, we didn't find the blue-spotted salamander, but we found a single vernal pool on the site, and that is right here. If you want to scroll to the next one. This is just a photograph of the vernal pool. It's a very dense shrub swamp. It borders the edge of Research Parkway. For reference, in the distance, that's the Daycare building there. Go to the next one. We had 2 indicator species breeding in that pool. That's your typical spotted salamander, as opposed to the state-listed blue-spotted salamander complex, and then wood frog. Those were the 2 vernal pool indicator species. One of the things we wanted to point out is that there's a compliance document, or a guidance document, if you will, called the Best Development Practices document. I just included a copy of the cover here for reference. And the basic guidelines are for existing developments, no additional activity within the 100-foot perimeter around the pool, and if the pool already exceeds 25% development within 750 feet of the pool, the guidance is no increased development in that 750-foot zone. So just going back to the previous map, again, here's the pool outlined in green here, embedded in this swamp. This green dash line closest to the pool is the 100-foot zone, and then this green dash line out here is the 750-foot zone. Basically, the idea is these vernal pool species, while they breed in the wetland itself during the non-breeding season, they inhabit terrestrial forest or upland forest. So the habitat that's critical to these species when they're not breeding is basically this whole patch of forest here, which is going to remain intact. There's no activity or disturbance in that forest. So my point is on this topic is that with no additional development in those zones, we don't anticipate any negative impacts to the vernal pool. There's a number of other species we found during our wildlife surveys. Again, I have a table and a whole discussion in my report. In the interest of time, I won't go through that, but again, if you have questions. But just back to the 1 state-listed species we did find, that was the eastern box turtle. Our surveys revealed a single individual turtle. It's a cryptic species, so you would expect when you find one, there are additional turtles, but given the time that we spent to find 1 turtle, that indicates to us that it's not a thriving population, which is what you'd expect for a site like this. It's in a fragmented landscape. the property itself is already developed, and one of the major issues on this site with respect to species like turtles and things that can't fly or are not highly mobile is there's a significant system of fencing on this site that traverses the wetlands and the uplands in a manner that pretty much prevents wildlife to move freely across the site. So the amount of roads, the development on the landscape, the development on the site, and the fencing all tells us that you would not expect a robust population of the eastern box turtle on this site. Regardless, we've proposed and will implement a series of best management practices, which the DEEP will generally require anyhow when we go to file for a stormwater permit. The basic idea is that you install the perimeter fencing, which in this case will be silt fencing, as Michelle described, and then you do a series of sweeps, as they call them, just basically searching along the interior of the fence on the construction side to try to identify and locate turtles and just basically move them out of the construction zone. The idea being is you're trying to protect individual animals during construction. So we are proposing those. Those are listed in detail in my report. So those are the sort of the general results of our wildlife findings. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on the wetland impacts. As Michelle said, we've got a total of 2,465 square feet of wetland impact. I think one of the things I wanted to point out is we recognize that this is a large site, and as you said, Mr. Chairman, it's a big site. Why are we grading, and why do we have activity close to the wetlands? One of the things I look at least from an ecological perspective, is what would a development like this look like on a virgin site? And considering the ecological impacts of that, how much fill would be required, new roads, new infrastructure, new traffic patterns. So to me, as an ecologist, redevelopment of a site is always going to have far less environmental impacts than new development. So I think that's just, a perspective that I took on this. In order to mitigate the impacts, both direct and indirect, the upland review area impacts, we are first proposing a wetland creation area. And the general rule of thumb is you propose to create 2-to-1 ratio loss to creation, and we've done that. We have a 5,400 square foot wetland creation area proposed. It's right here on the southern portion of the site in purple. For reference, it's near the proposed stormwater basin that Michelle described. If you want to switch to the next one, next slide. Just so you could see where this falls and what the area looks like. This is just a photograph of that general area where we're proposing to do the creation areas. You can see this is an area that's already been disturbed. There's just a few young trees in here. It's essentially all invasive species. It's a formerly graded slope that was adjacent to what we could tell from looking at the old aerial photographs was like a construction staging area. Because we didn't want to create wetlands in a manner that would disturb an area that's already stable and forested and already functioning as habitat. So we chose this disturbed area. It is uplands. We did try to find an area of disturbed wetlands on the site that we could restore, wetlands that had been filled. But unfortunately, the only areas where that occurs are the areas I had shown photos of earlier, which contain utilities and sewer lines, which would preclude us from excavating out that fill and restoring those wetlands. So we chose this area. This is just a close-up of the plan itself. Again, this is the creation area. This is the stormwater basin, and this area in gray surrounding this, or sort of connecting the creation area with the basin, that's going to be a conservation and meadow mix. So basically like a grassland, essentially. Our goal was to sort of take this whole sort of, disturbed area and recreate some green space that incorporated both the mitigation area as well as the stormwater features. Ultimately, when we stabilize the wetland, we're going to just create a narrow break at the edge of the creation area to connect it hydrologically back to the main wetland, but we'll do that once it's stable. We do include a monitoring plan in here, and we're proposing to do a monitoring for 3 years, both to confirm a success of the plantings themselves and to just confirm that the area is stable. So we're proposing 3 years of monitoring with annual reporting to go to Aaron. The plantings that we're proposing for this area are listed on this plan sheet, which is WP2. Again, they're all here in this table here, but essentially what we're going to create is a marsh planting. There's a close-up of the list, but that's the list of plants that we're proposing in that area. So again, it's 5,400 square feet to compensate for the 2,400 square feet of fill. In terms of grading, what we did is we identified a matching grade of the adjacent wetland in this area here. Again, the wetland is this sort of dotted line here. We identified a rough elevation of 334, and that's what we used to create the grading in the creation area. So we're going to basically match the grade of the adjacent wetland. So that's the creation area. We also have several areas of wetland enhancement. I'll just go through those quickly. These are all within the upland review area as opposed to within the wetlands themselves. The first is the areas that are noted in green along the 2 ornamental ponds. If you can see these 2 strips of green around the 2 ponds, the eastern and western ponds. What we're proposing there is to convert what is now maintained lawn into what's called a no-mow grass mix. And the idea being, this lawn is sort of like a poster child for what you don't want to do next to a river. There's a heavy use of pesticides, fertilizer, and it's mowed like twice a week. So all of those clippings, including everything that goes into that grass, goes right into the pond, which is the muddy river, and goes downstream. So you're talking about nutrient loading and also pesticide and fertilizer. So by converting that to a no-mow grass mix, the no-mow mix doesn't require fertilizer. The way it grows and the density in which it grows, it doesn't require pesticides and requires essentially no watering. It's called no-mow because you can mow it frequently, but you can also mow it not at all if you want to. The typical is sort of once a year. I have this grass in my front yard. I've had it for 4 years. I've never mowed it. I water it maybe twice a summer, and I've never fertilized it and never put any pesticides on it. So it's very hardy, very low maintenance, and very eco-friendly. So we've converted a pretty sizable area of lawn into that no-mow mix. Just to give you an example, this is the western pond, and you can see this entire strip of maintained lawn that borders this pond is just your typical, typical lawn that will be converted. And again, this is the eastern pond looking south, and again, this whole entire strip of lawn will all be converted to that no-mow grass mix. Next, what we've proposed is, you can go to that. Actually, I'll just show you quickly. This is just the site plan detail, which shows these areas in gray around the eastern pond where the no-mow is going, and then this area in gray along the western pond where the no-mow is going. Lastly, we have plantings that we're proposing in the upland review area at the margins of the limits of disturbance. So basically where we're going to grade down close to the wetlands, and this was something that came up and was really a recommendation from Aaron, and a good one was, again, we recognize that we're grading in close proximity to the wetlands. So in an effort to sort of renaturalize, for lack of a better word, those edges of disturbance, once the grading is done, we're going to replant all of that perimeter with a few different things. First, we're going to have a conservation meadow mix, which is basically like a grass, meadow, and wildflower mix that doesn't require mowing, and again is something that doesn't require fertilizer and pesticide and watering. So it's a low maintenance meadow mix. And then within that, we're going to plant a number of woody shrubs and trees. And so where this is going to happen is all of these areas in blue. There's one strip here, 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 and then here. In total, it's 42 trees and 434 shrubs, all planted along the margins of disturbances, sort of, again, to sort of renaturalize the edge of the upland review area where we're going to grade. That's everything I have.
How many square feet of upland review area are you disturbing? I thought I heard it before, but I missed it. I don't recall it.
90,000. Total was 90,000 square feet of disturbance, and of which,
Of upland review area.
of upland review area. But in previously disturbed upland review that we're redisturbing, out of that 90 is 58,000, and 32 is new, never been disturbed disturbance. If that makes sense.
So what are you, how many square feet are you involved in upland review area? Never mind what had been disturbed, what you're going to be involved in?
90,000,
90,000.
90.
Okay. All right. Next. You all set?
Yeah, that's the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioners, comments? Ally?
Not of nothing.
Dave?
No, it seems like everything works fine but then you had the problem on the silt, the soil.
And I go ahead, Debbie?
No,
Darrell?
Yeah, none right now.
Negative this time.
Mr. Chairman?
Aaron?
Yeah, Michelle, could you go over the bentonite wall? Because that's important because you don't want that wetland to, it's above, that wetland is located
Yes, yes.
above your project, so.
As a conservative measure, there's this wetlands right here. Oops, this wetland right here is a conservative measure. We want to make sure that we don't drain it, underground, that nothing seeps out. We are proposing that along the edge of that wetland, we put a bentonite slurry dam in so that we're not draining any of the wetland. And we're going to do additional geotechnical testing. This is just a typical detail of what it would look like. We've done this successfully in different areas in the state, one of which is down in Lebanon, I believe, at a mall area down there where we just don't want, we want to make sure that we're not going to drain the water out of the wetland.
Where is this 100-foot high retaining wall going?
There's no 100-foot high retaining wall, so,
looks like
no, that's a graphic of what the retaining wall type will be, not necessarily the color or anything, but go to the retaining wall drawing. We have a drawing in here in your package.
Well, where is that going to be?
That's what I'm going to show you. This green, the green all along here, represents retaining walls of various height. And back up in here, this is a high point of roughly 25 feet. And then it peters down to 0 feet. Okay? And it goes around the property. And here, this is the high point, roughly 33 feet, down to 0.
In your rendering, it looks like you're right up against water. Is that true?
This is just a graphic. No, we're not going to be right up against water. There's going to be grading between the retaining wall and any upland, wetland, or it's going to be on the, there's going to be up at the top where the retaining walls are up here. It actually slopes back up.
What's the closest point it's going to be to either upland review area?
Probably, down where we're filling the section of the wetland. This is the closest, right here. It's going to be just on the other side of the grading and the silt fence. That's the closest point.
That's on the western side of the site?
It'd scroll out. Correct. This is the section that we're proposing the 2,400 square feet of fill.
Right, but that wall is going to follow that whole site just about then.
Correct. Right, because the topography goes like this across the site. There's like 100 feet of topography across the site. And so in order to create, the level area that's required for this type of facility, There's a wall on the two sides. I don't know, have you seen the FedEx site at all?
No, but that's the highest block wall in the country, I think.
It's,
Block wall that's up at Federal Express is the highest wall in the country.
the ones in Middletown are, there's some that are almost 50 feet. It's pretty impressive.
It has quite a reputation, the bristol-myers site. Aaron, or no, excuse me, the FedEx site. Anything else?
Just more about the bentonite wall. It's 30 feet high, right?
Go back to the details.
And how,
I thought the bentonite wall goes in the ground.
It goes in the ground.
Goes in.
It goes
Okay.
underground, and it's
Right.
going to be based upon geotech information. We just want to make sure that we're not going to necessarily drain that wetland.
Right,
Like
so-
at the wetland, if this is the surface of the wetland, the table, it's going to be below the table because we don't want to draw water
right,
out from the
so
bottom.
it's about 30 feet in depth then?
Not necessarily. It's going to be predicated on field conditions and additional geotech.
Okay.
To make sure we get it correct.
And and it goes along, what, about 200 feet long?
It goes along the edge of that, wetland to protect it.
All right, and then there's the gap in the middle between the two, or you have two bentonite walls proposed.
Along the edge of that wetland, correct. It's not going right up against the edge of the wetland. It's going to be on the outside, far
Okay.
enough away from the wetland.
So
So
I-
there's no disturbance.
So remember I asked you to look at that
Yeah,
gap?
this goes uphill. Okay, this goes uphill.
Right,
So what we want to make sure is that there's no seepage coming out of this wetland that we then draw down whatever's in here. So what you do in cases like this, what we've done before and what we're doing on a job in Newtown is you put a bentonite, cutoff wall. You
right.
pump bentonite in and you create an impervious surface so that water that's below this wetland doesn't drain out.
Right, I understand. Why is there a gap between the two bentonite walls in the middle there?
Because of the way the grading is, we don't think the way this wetland is divided that we need to be concerned about this area.
From testing?
But we're gonna be doing additional geotech, and this will be worked out in the field so that it's 100% correct.
Okay, and what's that thing in the middle there?
This,
Yeah, what's that thing?
that's a swale, that's capturing, water from a bench. There's a bench here, a reverse bench, where water will be collected, and it'll flow this way, and it'll flow this way to this point, and it'll come down here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Anything else?
Commissioners, any other comments?
We know it's a lot of information, Mr. Chairman. It's our first opportunity to present this to you, and we thank you for giving us the time. This has gone through a number of iterations, and certainly other alternatives before we brought this to you this evening. We're still in the process of completing, I think, some of the review that came, questions that came from water and sewer. I don't think we've received anything from engineering yet, to my knowledge, and so we're anxious to review those comments, take certainly concerns mentioned this evening, and be back with hopefully an application and changes that meet the approval of this commission.
Well, there certainly is an issue with the runoff from this. During development, during the demolition, a real serious issue because it's had such problems in it before. It's going to be interesting to have all those things on site. I don't know if you're going to have a team standing there at midnight in case the storm comes up, ready to go.
One of the things we talked about, one of the things that is mentioned, Erin has it in her report, and I know that there were conversations with Michelle and Eric about having, an erosion control manager, or some sort of, somebody or monitor in the process. And the good thing about BL is they're just a couple miles away from the location. So in terms of, and the owner is committed to that, by the way, there's a recognition that it is an issue. And that's why part of the presentation this night, a big part, was Michelle going through that with this commission, recognizing how important it is and how difficult it is. And that's why when you talk in terms of belts and suspenders, it's not just, sort of a glib statement. There really is an awful lot of effort here to make certain, and we'll bring back answers even the next meeting, to make certain that all of that is addressed, because, it's far better for the owner to make sure that there's enough of supervision and protection than having to resolve a breach or a problem. It's much less expensive.
Well, I have a major concern because, yes, you're only filling 2,400 square feet, which probably will be more than that before, depending on the operator. But you have all this upland review area that you're going to be right down to the wetlands to deal with. And I've just been kicking around too many bulldozer operators to know how they think. The other thing is, I don't think we have jurisdiction, but it would be I think a major asset to the commission to know who the contractor is, because there's certainly some contractors out there that we're going to shake our head at, and all we can see is a tremendous amount of management to the contractors. Not all contractors are created equal, and this is a problem that you can deal with. So those are some of the things. You're about the same number of square footage as Bristol-Myers was. I don't know if the footprint's the same. Probably not. Bristol-Myers being 4 floors or something like that.
Right.
Well, this is a public hearing, so at this time, I will ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak regarding this application. Come up to the microphone, name and address for the record.
My name is John Young. I'm from Phillips Real Estate. We occupy the space at 1 Technology Drive. Our concerns are less about the wetlands and vegetation, but more about the disruption of our business during construction. I don't know whether this is an appropriate time to discuss that.
What specifically is the concern?
Dust, vibration, rodents.
Well, you got to remember, this is wetlands. Some of your questions may be a planning and zoning issue.
I'm sorry?
Some of your questions you're looking for answers to are a planning and zoning issue.
Okay.
This is a wetlands commission, so your
So this is not the appropriate forum.
should
Okay.
be focused towards the wetlands issues.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sure, come on up.
Yes, Tom Levutis, 1232 Barnes Road. And I was just concerned with underground water as far as, because we're all residential wells over there, and I don't know if there's going to be any blasting on the site that would disturb.
Well, I can tell you there was blasting before.
We had
When they put
problems
the last, they put the last addition on, there was a lot of blasting.
in the mid-90s. It compromised our well. We had a lot of problems. That's why I'm kind of concerned going forward.
I would think it would be, they're bringing it down to a level and they're actually creating a wall to raise the elevation. So as far as blasting into that mountain, I think that would be not necessary in this site, but certainly they can answer to it. But I tell anyone with concerns with their well, certainly take samples before they start doing any work to that site. Can you answer if there's going to be any blasting?
We're going to do additional geotech testing to get a better handle on, we've done a preliminary round already. There possibly could be, there's weathered rock that we've encountered in the borings so far. But if there ever is blasting, there'd have to be a pre-blasting survey that would be done.
Blasting or hammer? You think you're going to hammer the rock you found or blast it?
Well, weathered rock you can rip. So it just depends if we find any competent rock. And right now it's been, the borings have showed weathered rock that I've seen.
Anything else, sir?
No, that was my main concern, yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else regarding the public to speak regarding this application? Okay, any other comments for tonight? Any other comments from the commissioner?
Just my comments, I don't know if, I hope everyone's had a chance to read my 13-page report, but just looking toward moving forward, I'd like the commission to keep in mind all feasible and prudent alternatives for every single regulated activity on this site. I haven't counted up how many individual regulated activities there are yet, but there's a bunch. And so that each one can perhaps, should be looked at, is there an alternative? Could we do it a little differently over here? Can we tweak it over here? And that's what I'll be looking at with the project team closely now, because I did my first cut review, and now in the next few weeks I'll be doing a more detailed review. Just today we had an hour-and-a-half session, and we were coming up with some minor little changes. And then I would encourage the commission to do a site walk. We can talk about that if you want to do.
What are you going to look at? What are you going to look at on the site walk?
I spent 2.5 hours out there with the project team, and you take it all in. You understand it when you're out there. You really understand what's going on there, how the muddy river flows, and it goes under the road, and then it comes into the pond. And another thing you would understand to ask in terms of mitigations, what should you ask for? The project team has presented the mitigations they'd like to do. You're not tied to those mitigations. You can do restoration of wetlands. You can do a host of different things, which some of ideas I put in here. You get a better sense of it. You get a sense, especially I would say, okay, is Carpenter Lane, where this comes out, the access comes out onto Carpenter Lane, and it's really tight with that wetland system there, is to get a sense of when that upland review area is eliminated along there, what are you left with? What kind of a wetland is this? What will the impact to that wetland really be? And in that case, I would ask, if there's going to be a site walk, ask the project team to machete a little trail down there, because the day we were out there, we couldn't get down there because it's too dense. So, but that dense shrubbery is not going to be there anymore. It's going to be removed. So the wetland will be exposed, so I think it might be interesting to machete a path down there and get a look at that.
Well, that is one of my whole concerns regarding losing the buffer area, the upland review area. I think their PowerPoint presentation on the wetlands area, the red maple swamps, etc., was helpful. If you want to have a site investigation, unless somebody carries me, I don't think I'm going. At this point.
Well, actually, in here I talk about some alternatives, and we really didn't get into alternatives too much tonight. But a big question I have is, as the chairman said, this is a 180-acre site. Why can't we move the alteration to the east 50 feet? Why can't we move everything 50 feet to the east on that building? In other words, why can't we lose 50 feet? I guess it would translate into 50 feet of building along the west side of that first warehouse by Carpenter Lane.
East side?
Well, you would lose the 50 feet on the west side of the building.
On the west side of the building? That puts you right in the wetlands.
Right, but if you make the building skinnier, I'm trying to make that building skinnier. And it's roughly a 14-acre box, am I right, with the 14 acres, the size of that thing? So could we make it a 13.5-acre box?
And we've talked about that. The building is 475 feet in depth. That's the narrowest. They usually, this size building, this type of building with loading docks on both sides, typically would be 500 feet. This is 470.
Yeah, 500 feet minimum.
Minimum. So it's in an effort to minimize the fill, it's already been reduced to just about the smallest width possible to make this still viable, to make it still work. Again, every factor. This is not a plan that was put together in a month or 2 or 3. They've been looking at this site and working on it for, I think it's upwards of 9 months now, maybe even longer. And there is a sensitivity. I mean, hopefully that's one of the things that came through tonight, is that there's a sensitivity to the erosion control, very difficult issue, to the wetlands, the viability, their function, their value, and that's why Eric's on board to talk about what sort of mitigation is here to make things perhaps even better. We're prepared to respond to any legitimate concerns, and we'll be back. I mean, at the end of the day, we think the project is a good one for the town. We think it's going to be a good one for your wetlands, and that's our goal, and that's what we've been directed to do.
Well, then you and Aaron have to work things out.
I might add, Mr. Chairman, as far as the site visit, one of the things, and I think it was in her comments, in Aaron's comments, we have problems. It's still occupied. Bristol-myers is still there. It's under security. It's under guard. So we couldn't have a special public meeting. There was a site walk with the entire commission. But in talking to Attorney Small, if there were commissioners who wanted to do a walk, we could schedule them for two by no more than 2 commissioners at a time. We would
You
make
hear that,
those arrangements.
Commissioners?
Perhaps through Aaron's office, and we could do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the public? Commissioners? Okay, then I guess I table this public hearing at 9/18 until September 18th. Is that the next date?
September 5th,
Whatever the next meeting is, September 5th.
September 5, yeah.
Thank you.
Today's the 18th, I'm sorry. Okay. So we're tabling it till till September.
And are we doing site walks before then, or wait?
Site walks are going to be done on an individual basis through your office, only 2 at a time because of security at Bristol-Myers.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay. Are you here for the next one, Dennis? Violation? I'll get there, Dave.
Do you need your cane, Jim?
Your words said that about blasting, so I figured you would. Yeah. The rest of it we're not interested in, just the first sentence. I have it in here.
I knew you said, there's some talk about that right now.
Let's see how you can tell your other concern. Let's see how you can go over these slides.
Today? I breezed in there right before I came.
Okay, so you got all your business on? Huh?
I tried calling Erin 3 times today to let her know I'd be 5 minutes late, and every time the phone was busy.
Yeah. Well, you go a little crazy when, you go, they have a meeting, you do go crazy. And she gets on the, and I would, I get on the phone, and sometimes I'm gonna be on there.
You need your cane, Jim? Okay. Good as new in no time at all.
What's that?
Good as new in no time at all.
A little bit, they're working pretty well today.
You turned me off?
Did you have any surgery or anything on that?
Oh.
What's that? No,
Okay, wait a second.
on your legs or anything like that?
2 knees.
We have a violation.
Yeah, one time.
Okay. All right. There's no new business to come before us. No new applications, or do we have new applications, Aaron?
Yes, I handed out one tonight. That was 508 Main Street. 508 Main Street, Frenchie's Auto
Yeah,
Body,
Frenchie's, yep, Frenchie's right here, yep.
which may qualify for administrative approval. I'm going to go out and look at it. I don't know yet.
Okay.
And the one above that, is 35 Tully's Road. They are requesting, that's Nucor Steel Company, and they are requesting a administrative approval. I have to go out and look at that to see if they qualify for that. But, and I'll let you know, Mr. Chairman, I'll let you know what I find out in the field.
All right, and I think Commission has been very acceptable to that. If you think administration approval is proper, they've gone along with it, for the record. Okay, election of officers, I don't think so. We're short. Nick, tonight?
Are we ever going to get to that?
Well, somebody want to take over?
Do we have a, I mean, I was probably doing a couple of elections, right? Because 1 year's gone by. So we have to elect for the, we have to.
We don't have to do it twice. It's not like
Then we have
getting
to elect
elections done on your car.
Okay. All right, getting down to violations. There is, we'll go with number 2, 998 East Center Street, benchmark land development. And this is tied together with the Providence and Worcester Railroad. Aaron, we have an attorney representing the applicant. And what's the status of this violation?
A copy of the notice of violation went out in your packet, which was dated June 27th. They got issued the notice, and the notice of violation went to Benchmark Development, but it also, who owns this property, but it's also went to the Tilcon Railroad property, because Tilcon owns the strip of railroad that runs through town. And a copy of the letter also went to the Providence, let me get his name right, Providence and Worcester Railroad Company, because Attorney Senaviva indicated that those folks were also involved. And they're involved because they own them. I found out tonight, they own the metal rail. They own the rail line. They don't own the property. They own the metal rail line. So, and they believe they have a lease with Benchmark or Palumbo. A gentleman named Mr. Palumbo is leasing this.
Well, anyway, what's the violation?
Okay, so this development came before planning and zoning looking for a special permit, and it was referred to me, and I said, hold up, they've got wetlands back there. There was an issue going back, I think 2008, where they were driving around, changing the grade in the wetlands, and I ran out there, and when that played out, they hired a soil scientist to map their wetlands, because they thought it was a field, they didn't understand it was a wet field. But of course, the soil scientists produced the delineations. Okay, so I had a record from 2008, so I knew where the wetlands were. Well, it turns out the plans they submitted to planning and zoning for their special permit had the wetlands on it. So they were right there on the map. So what happened, I don't know why, because I haven't talked directly with Mr. Palumbo, but what happened is he filled a lot of area. I handed out tonight a colored plan that I drew today, because the surveyors came in today. They presented the engineer surveyors on this project. They gave me some new survey maps, because in their notice of violation, I asked for a new survey map that shows me existing conditions, because all the maps handed in really didn't show me what exactly was out there and how much filling had been done. They filled the area behind the little red building to create a turnaround for trucks to come in, loop around, and turn around and get in the right direction to be loaded. Because what happens is a rail car comes down full of sand, goes off on, it's what they call sidetracked, goes off on this little spur rail and parks there, and then the sand is offloaded onto trucks and taken elsewhere. So they filled in all that area with processed stone right up to the rail to create a nice level area where they're gonna do their operation and for the trucks to turn around there. So in the process they filled, oh gosh, you can see by the colored map I handed out tonight, lots of wetlands there. And of great concern to me, not only did they fill some wetlands and some upland review area, but they changed the drainage. There's a drainage pipe, they installed a drainage pipe. And it, within the town drainage easement, connecting the town's drainage pipe, which takes water off North Airline Road, they connected that to a separate drainage pipe that takes drainage under the railroad bed to 5 Shrekky Court. Well, the problem, first off, you need permission to go ahead and do that, but the problem now is that wetland isn't draining. I talked to the engineer today, I said, but where's that water going from that wet meadow? Where's it draining to? He goes, it's not, it's just sitting there. So this is a problem. That has to be corrected. That water, that wetland has to continue to drain like it always did. It's got to get under that railroad bed. So anyway, so that's where we are today, and I hoped that Mr. Palumbo would be here tonight. I did get a call from the Providence and Worcester Railroad people, and they said they would be willing to come tonight. And I said I would speak for them because they're coming from a long distance. I said our first 2 hearings might go on for quite a while. I said, I don't think you should come tonight. I will represent what they told me, and what they told me to say is they're not involved in this. They don't know too much about it. All they do is they own that metal rail line. The property is owned by Tilcon. They're not sure they think they have a lease with Mr. Palumbo, but they can't find it. The attorney said she was looking to find a copy of this lease. The lease that says you can use this spur line. And they didn't authorize any development out there. They really didn't know too much about it. So that's why I said, look, just don't come tonight. It's okay, I'll speak on your behalf.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, for your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. Senaviva Law Firm, represent Benchmark Land Development. We filed a planning and zoning application for a special permit to do certain work at the site. And if you had a chance to go out there, it's a pretty clean-looking site, having been a poorly managed property for many, many years. It had a construction company, I think, there before, et cetera. I don't know that I agree or disagree with Aaron's comments at this point. We do have, my client has hired Godfrey Hoffman engineers and surveyors. They prepared 2 survey maps, I believe, that they presented to Aaron. I haven't seen them yet. They're the pre-existing conditions and I guess what has been done. My client said that the work that was done in the wetlands area, and it may be in the wetlands, I don't know yet, behind an existing building on the north side of the property was done about 20 to 24 months ago, and that he had pulled out some construction debris and what he called garbage, construction garbage and the like from the back of the building, removed that and then put in the gravel, the crushed stone. And it was designed to make it more attractive. So when we were going to planning and zoning, the contemplation was, get the neighbors, get some letters. There was a lot of support. People were pleased with how that site's been developed because it was such a poorly managed property for so long. And then when Erin went out during her review for the P&Z is when we first found about this potential violation. It's something we take seriously. It's just that we need more time because at the end of the day, we haven't met as a team. I haven't met with Godfrey Hoffman. I've talked to the engineer on 2 occasions. And then once we meet, we'll sit down with your environmental planner, be prepared to respond intelligently at your next meeting. I mean, at the end of the day, from what I understand, for example, this drainage she's talking about, this underground pipe, my guy says that he repaired an existing break in some of this drainage work in the back of the building. It was broken, it was flooding the area, and so he thinks he's made it better. I don't know if that's true or not yet. I mean, we'll do our investigation and come back to you and report. And at the end of the day, if there's been a violation, we'll own up to it and find a way to resolve it to the commission's satisfaction.
Well, my opinion is to bring it back the way it was. There was never a turnaround in the building, there shouldn't build a turnaround. It's not a case, we lost the wetlands, we lost the upland review area, the buffer, whichever you want to call it. There's a problem with the drainage I think it should be brought back the way it should be. I'm not sure a permit should be granted for that activity on that. Commission, Ally?
I agree.
Hey?
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
Carol?
Agreed. Great.
So we've got some direction, thank you.
All right, anything else, Aaron?
I'd encourage the commission to go out there on their own. I don't think we have to go as a team to look at the site, so.
You can drive right around the building and see what they did. It's kind of easy that. Okay. All right. What I do with the agenda. Okay. I think we're about done.
I think we're caught up.
Well, the other violation, Kondraki Lane. What's the status of that at the moment?
Okay, I spoke to the engineer twice since you last saw me, and, well, since the commission saw me, and there was a delay because the company that was supplying it wanted to make sure that this is going to work, and they sent some people down, they did testing and so on. So it's going forward, but they have yet to give me a plan. In other words, I was expecting the plan to come in this week. It hasn't come in yet. So they haven't touched, everything's the way it was. Nothing has been touched out there. And our engineering department hasn't gotten the plan to review yet. But apparently it's coming any day now. I did expect a representative here, but no one's here tonight. So that's where it sits. They're trying to get the perfect slip lining for these pipes. They only have one shot at it, so they got to make sure it's perfect, and that's what's been delaying things, as it was explained to me.
Well, I hadn't been out to that site, maybe I should go by it, but the fact that it's an emergency facility or a nursing home facility, and to have that sensitive issue getting in and out really is interesting.
Right. I would ask the commission to affirm that the cease and correct order remains in effect, because the law department likes us to do that on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Need a motion on that?
And I missed, yes, I need a motion on it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the cease and correct order for 55 Kondraki Lane, which is emergency driveway crossing work, remain in effect.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
None. Okay. Next thing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.